Good morning, everyone.
Only houses on the river, I think, famously.
I, along with my co-chair, Brett LaPere, would like to welcome you all to Art in Bloom Homegrown, presented by Iberia Bank First Horizon. We are so very thrilled to be celebrating both in person and online today. Thank you all for signing up virtually and to all of our committee members for their hard work to make this a success. Before I introduce our wonderful speakers, I want to make a few quick announcements. We have boxed lunches for everyone available outside of the cafe after the lectures. The museum has set up some tables in the sculpture garden across the street to enjoy as a picnic if you would like to stay for lunch. I hope everyone will also take a few moments to check out our fabulous silent auction set up directly adjacent to us here in the Dathel and Tommy Coleman courtyard. The auction will be online through this Monday at noon, so we hope you will register online and bid on some of our great offerings. We are expecting our premier artist, Andrew Lamar Hopkins, to join us this afternoon, so we hope you can all meet him. He is fabulous. I am now pleased to introduce our extraordinary speakers. We have Margot Shaw, who is the founder and editor-in-chief of Flower Magazine. Now, in its 13th year, the magazine has grown to include features on homes, gardens, entertaining, and lifestyle. Margot is a sought-after speaker at antique and garden shows, museums, botanical gardens, and interior design centers. She is the author of the newly released book, Living Floral, Entertaining and Decorating with Flowers. She is also the author of Styling Nature, A Masterful Approach to Flower Arranging, and the creator of the Flower Flash, public street arts installations made with flowers. We also have Richard Keith Langham, who has been a force in the decorating world for 30 years. Langham's keen eye and tremendous talent serve well in assembling his signature rooms with some of New York's most legendary ladies, including Mrs. William F. Buckley Jr. and Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Langham has been named to Elle Decor's A-List and Architectural Digest AD 100, and is in demand as a speaker around the country. His book about decorating the remarkable rooms of Richard Keith Langham was published in October 2017. Both Margot and Keith's books will be available for purchase after the lectures in the Grand Hall. We hope everyone will stay around and meet these incredible gurus of their field. Thank you, Keith and Margaret, for coming today. I know you are both dear friends, and we are so excited to have you. Welcome.
Oh, take it.
Yes, you can speak into that, but if you want to walk around.
Tony, can I use that mic?
You can use the podium, isn't it?
Good morning. Oh, yeah, it works. So, thank you all for coming today, and I know this is risky. Not really. I hear that New Orleans is a almost 100% vaccinated city, and of course you are. But anyway, I want to thank the Garden Study Club and Catherine and everybody involved, our two chairs who I just met who are fabulous, for inviting me here. The last time I was here for the Garden Study Club was 10 years ago. Who heard me then? No, come on. Okay, this is much better. Let me tell you why. The last time I was here, we ate at a restaurant that shall remain nameless, and that night, in the middle of the night, I began to throw up a lot. But by the time I had to speak, I had several Coca-Colas and some crackers, and I went on, and I was so weak and relaxed, I really didn't give an S about how it went, and it went great. So anyway, now we have this new book, and I am trying to pay back my advance, so please buy one. But anyway, I am here to tell you a little bit about the book and a little bit about my provenance in flowers. And I was very surprised when this all gelled in my heart and mind, because I had no background in flowers. Birmingham's a huge flower town, but my mother was one of those people who knew who to call And I inherited that in my DNA. It's just knowing that right person. But I was intimidated about flowers, and so I just didn't do anything forever. But then when we started the magazine, I started thinking, where is this love coming from? And I had this memory all of a sudden of I lived on a place called Shook Hill Road, and it was very rustic, pastoral, country, 5-6 acre lots, and I was like 5, and I remember just rambling the hills by myself and coming upon this carpet of color in Betty Yo's garden and saying to myself, those are pretty, I want those, and then harvesting all of her hyacinths. And of course not knowing what they were then, but taking them home to my mother. Meanwhile, Betty Yo was in the second story of her house spying me doing this, and then calls my mother and says, Caroline, you've got a surprise on the way. And I did. I thought it was, oh, won't she be so proud of me with this bushel of hyacinths? But she was waiting at the door brandishing a hairbrush. And for those of a certain age, you know what that meant. Now they would call DHR or something, Child Protective Services. But so I got the message, but now whenever I smell hyacinths, I get this tingling in my backside. And so
To steal.
So anyway, I don't really buy hyacinths that much, but, and so then the next memory that I had was my mother was this tiny steel magnolia, my grandmother, and she did not get me. I rode horses, played field hockey, I was a tomboy, and she was all ruffles and frills and white gloves, and she just did not get me. But one day, I was at her house on Cherokee Road in Birmingham, and I looked out the window. I was about 11, getting ready to go to the barn. I looked out the window, and there was this carpet of daffodils. Same larcenous thought. I go out and harvest as many as I can, throw them in the sink in her pantry, and start pulling vessels. I didn't care, I didn't know. I'm sure they were Sevres and Waterford and all kinds of wonderful things, and I was just stuffing daffodils into them when she came upon me. And she, for the first time in my life, I think she thought, okay, there's hope. There's a vestige of femininity in this child. So, flowers there's a mixed message for me in that, the sort of punishment and then the approbation. And so, but the love of beauty I can trace to both of my parents. We grew up, after Shook Hill, we went to Switzerland for about 3 years. And my father was a great aesthete, and my mother learned from him, and she was a wordsmith. But we went all over Europe, 6 and 8 years old. And I remember my father saying for like weeks, we're going to the Louvre, we're going to the Louvre. And you're going to see the, I can't remember which one it was. The Mona Lisa. Yeah, just a small, forgettable painting. You're going to see the Mona Lisa, and just big talk, really talking it up. And so my brother and I were so excited to go to the Louvre and see the Mona Lisa. And we wait in line, and we get there, and we're 6 and 8, remember? And we get there behind the olive velvet rope. I remember like it was yesterday. And my father says, and there she is. And we look up, and there's this small painting behind glass of a pretty homely woman, right? Let's be honest, sacrilege, I know, but she is. And I know I'm in a museum, I shouldn't say that. But anyway, we were so let down, and my father, I remember he registered our looks of disappointment, and he grabbed us by the hand and said, come with me. And he dragged us through all the concourses and hallways of Versailles, and the Louvre, and down and around and up, and said, okay, now stop, look at this. And there at the top of the steps was the Winged Victory of Samothrace. I don't know, has anybody seen that? Shaft of light coming through, and this incredibly dramatic statue, and thousands of years old. And even at 6 years old, I can remember registering, okay, now this is some stuff. And I remember that feeling, and it never left. And so I traced that as sort of the beginning of my love of art and art history and beauty and flowers and things like that. So fast forward to 1986. I am in rehab. I am 35 years sober now at this point, opiates, so praise God. Very grateful. And, but I'm in rehab, and my mother's down in Palm Beach, and she's the one who knew who to call. And so it's Tuesday. I get rubrum lilies from her in rehab. And there's a note, love you, mama, whatever. She had called, I had been called Saturday by her doctor in Palm Beach telling me that she had died. So kind of a downer, I know, but it's cool because now when I smell lilies, she is immediately evoked. She is immediately in my heart and in my spirit. And so what had happened was she knew who to call. She'd call Malloy Love in Birmingham, Mountain Brook Flower Shop, and he couldn't get the order out in time. And so they were closed Sunday and Monday, and I got them Tuesday, and it was like this message from beyond. And I know that sounds kind of woo-woo, but it really was and is very special. So if anybody loves me here, you will send me lilies. Gates. So anyway, so then about 7 years later, I married this scamp, and Gates Shaw, who, anyway, I'm not going to embarrass him, but I might. No, anyway. So Gates was pushy and a pusher, and he was just pushy. And so he spotted some talents in me, and he urged me to develop those talents. And then our oldest daughter got married, and I knew who to call. And I called Sybil Sylvester, and she came in. Who has ever done an at-home wedding? They have support groups for us, and we can talk later. But what was I thinking? Well, I knew who to call. And so I worked for 9 months with Sybil, and I recognized what a beautiful, life-giving art form floral design was. And so after it was over, I called her and said, may I please come to work with you? You don't have to pay me. I might pay you. And she said, sure. So I was a 46-year-old intern, and Sybil was so gracious and generous and taught me everything I know about flowers. A couple of years in, I was in the Atlanta airport, Christmas vacation, heading to the islands, gathered up about $60 worth of magazines to find this much about what I loved. And this voice in my heart said, there's no flower magazine. You've bought a bunch of garden magazines and shelter magazines. And I was like, okay, well, so you need to start a flower magazine, literally. And so I did. It's a lot more to it than that, but I do live in Birmingham, Alabama, which is probably, is a publishing mecca. And so it was easy and sad at the same time because a lot of titles were shuttering, including Southern Accents. And so I kind of stood at the side door of Southern Progress and said, come on to my house. To people like Karen Carroll, the editor-in-chief of Southern Accents, and Alice Welch Doyle, and just a lot of wonderful refugees from Southern Progress. So I really didn't have to do much. I had all these experts who taught me about starting a magazine and writing and all the things that I needed to know. They sort of magically appeared. And fast forward again, I've got this great team, and Julie Durkee, who was Julie Sanji, some of y'all know her from Alexandria, but she called me and said, from Atlanta, she was our publisher, and said, you need a book. You need to do a book. And I said, I don't have time to do a book. And then I looked around and realized I had an incredible team assembled after 10, 11 years. And so I could take the time off and work on this book. So I started casting about with a book proposal, and I sent it to several publishers who shall remain nameless, and then I sent it to Rizzoli, which I was like, they'll never want it. They're the gold standard, they'll never want it. They don't know who I am, blah, blah, blah. They wanted it. They wanted to do a book with us. And so this is the product of that you're going to see right now. Karen Carroll and Lydia Somerville also wrote. We split the writing duties, so it's not just me. And we had some existing content, which made it easier. I had an in-house graphic designer, art director, who laid out the book. So I think it was pretty attractive to Rizzoli because they didn't really have to do much until the end. So again, still paying back that advance. So when this is over, and if you want me to sign it, I will. So this is our cover. This is Bee Cottage in East Hampton that used to belong to Frances Schultz, who's one of our contributing editors. And sadly, she sold that house, but we still have this as a memory. This is one of Charlotte Moss's fabric/wallpapers, and it's called Caroline. And I lined the book with that because my mother, Caroline, was the wordsmith, and that's where my love of words came down. So I thought that would be a nice nod to her. Then Michael Devine, another friend, has a line of fabrics and wallpapers, and so we used those for the dividers, the seasonal dividers. The book is divided into seasons. This is not a tome that, it's a resource, but it's individual tastemakers and designers and how they live and decorate and entertain with flowers, which is kind of part of my message that you don't have to be a professional. As a matter of fact, sometimes it's better if you're not. They have just done several simple arrangements, and then you'll see some more complicated things, but it's also about interior design and gardening. So it's a little bit of everything, but it's their personal take, and then you have some tips in a sidebar at the end. So this is Elaine Griffin, who's also, that's not her, that's a table. Elaine Griffin is, I'm sorry, I'm tired. Elaine Griffin is one of our contributing editors. She is an interior designer from Sea Island, Brunswick, Georgia. And so we asked her to put together a luncheon for us. And this is what she did. It's at the Cloister. And the flowers, the colors. I don't know about y'all, but I'm not afraid of a color commitment. And so if you come to our house, you will see that. And the magazine is pretty colorful. We don't have many white rooms, although there's a place for that, not in our magazine or in my house. But these, so anyway, this is our server with our wonderful exotic drinks and the beautiful mixed arrangement. And what I really like about this is really my message, or one of my messages about flowers and entertaining. Elaine is super preppy. In this particular tableau, she found some vintage lily and had it vinylized. There's no arrangement here. It's all just some monstera leaves and sort of tropical spot. That is a runner and term. So I quit using it. Plates and just pulling out that pink, and so the runner is unfortunately in this grade. But then when we shot this, I wasn't there, and I don't think, you got to do what Voodoo Dog that she bought several of these at Michael's for $16 and had them spray painted. And so this is part of the favors that we had made. And who here likes a favor? Because I don't like them, and I don't mind them, but I don't gorgeous. And then here's this little afterthought. That's fine. It's a lovely thought. I had the obligatory lunch with the few. Had a suggestion, and she said, with excitement, with a tie and with a card on it that says, "I think I shall never see a thing as lovely as." I never thought about doing it, but she was validated. So, another friend of ours is Chessie for design and designers and design books. And this is a Mother's Day luncheon that she put together with her daughters in East Hampton. And I included this because I rely on IKEA and Restoration Hardware and Three little girls did all the flowers and did the place was just get you some garden roses or hydrangeas or both, because they really arranged very floral, and then just the simplicity, the beauty of this one garden rose in just a sort of smoky eggplant. How much do I love them? And so they take turns setting the table, their Mother's Day luncheon, with their beautiful Gracie wallpaper and some very muted pastels. Moss is a friend. She also wrote the foreword to the book. I don't know, so she put together a luncheon for us, al fresco luncheon, and she used just a mishmash of things, or who is one of her inspirations. Charlotte is a Virginia girl as well. Some vintage glasses and bamboo flatware. And there's this flower room. My husband is an Episcopal priest and tells something that I will never have, but I covet it. It's Charlotte's flower room, and it's in her house in East Hampton. Crocs or whatever she wears, and goes and cuts and comes back, and votives and things. And so then she just puts them together here, like in this little porcelain practice tea, and it's idyllic. So this was, and I think, it's just, what else do you need? And you can't improve upon perfection with something that's perfect. So don't be scared. And there's Charlotte clipping her. Bought from Bunny Mellon's auction at Sotheby's. I don't know if y'all are aware, that auction, and she was so chic, Bunny, everything she did and had was so chic. Charlotte is a hickory pavilion that she spotted. Can't remember who the garden designer was and who the designer was that made this, but she brought pictures home, and somebody and evocative. So fall, she lives now in Millbrook. This is a little fall feed farm. It's a dressage farm in Millbrook. But my is obviously retrofitted and is now a party wagon, as we called it. And so that was this to me. And so some of the guests, and then this aerial shot to show you that the botanical fabric as a runner. And then here you have that. Anybody can do that. I mean, anybody can do that, and unfussy. So that's another one of my messages, or anthropology. And so you might kind of glean that this is from someone who worked in anthropology. Outside of Philadelphia, to me, it's just perfection. And that, I mean, we should have paid her that. An ingenious little, trunk with we had to clear off the gourds. Here's some nasturtiums with our bentwood chairs, and just, I love how that kind of recaps the bent. And then this little moment here on the right that we actually did use, but the way it was set up. So this is sort of vintage flatware that she found, and then cotton napkins from Guatemala. From Birmingham. A good friend of mine in a real talent show. And Precious Julia Reed was gonna, and she had to fly out because we had a monsoon. Can't compete with that. We will release you, but we hated. Primarily pretty classical with his William Kent containers. This is just a very humble watering can on the left with, try to do. There's James's dining, and then the little persimmon leather, just very fall offerings and picture, and he loves it. He magic of with this screen porch, we had up until this photo, also the fabulous centerpiece with the grass, but I wanted this for the cover of the book. Picked the other image. But I think this is a little too fancy arrangement, but a really beautiful transferware. Alex Hitz, anybody? Alex Hitz? He's a great chef, but he writes here in LA. Best. So I don't know how much they cost, but not much. Apples in a fluted, and a little cheeky. The shoot is that Alex used carnations, but carnations are inexpensive. My house, about 5 lights and red carnations, and it lasted for about a week. And these are just pretty details. Well, and just the beautiful candelabra. Mindy Rice is one of the great year, and she let us photos. And so here she's been drying roses. And there she is dressing the little detail, just like so many of y'all that are in design. Every detail is thought of. So humble and modest. Mindy, the event planner, designer, every name beautifully script that way. But I'm so glad we can pay people to do remnants. These are, what on earth is she putting cotton in there for? She's in California. And then someone, so y'all, there's cotton in California. And she allowed stockings that are made from decorating, and she couldn't find any making them, and traveled the world and found that. And now she is making, some of them makes these little stockings, and I have additions to your Christmas wrapping. Of that compote with the oranges in it. And my mother, see, this is one of those things, not going to save the world, but I gave someone an orange or a lemon, it was like giving them gold. And so that has just translated entire compote full of citrus. Spaniels, and can I tell you a little Elsie DeWolf? And I'm sitting there, then flying to the moon, she'd be everything in there, in a cloche, and I saw and then trying to, and she said, Breezeway on the left was thinking I would never do all white. And I said, Joseph again, although we love it. And so here is her, and she said this was just layers of beauty and texture, kind of a gypsy wagon, and she's decorated that. This is Chris Spitzmiller's house. He is really kind of a Renaissance guy. He cooks, and he just kind of does it all. He has branched out into doing, setting the table tall. And I said, Chris, you know, those are tough. And I mean, he really did. So, you know, sometimes you just have to learn by doing. Roselli in a warehouse somewhere. Take paper, I think, is really great with that rose. Then on the right, that actually, over the years. So, P. Allen Smith is I think this vista is one of the pretty fresco tableau. It looks like that's about all we did. And Alan set the tables, and you believe me, because who could have made him do that? This guy, he does everything, arranging, he does chickens. He raises exotic chickens, so they are really fabulous. I said, by Alan Smith with the gold paint pen, the name, and raised her hand and said, no, he didn't invent that, Elsie DeWolf. And then we're closing with Bunny Williams, who... Bunny, this is at her house, jealous still, and there's the house, the iconic room that I wanted to shoot because she had grown these tulips in her, again, not going to save the world, but it just makes a difference and pulls everything together. And so Bunny went and picked little pansies and put them on the napkin, kind of like those peonies, this huge arrangement in a faux mug grown by Bunny. And there she is, and she found all these floral mentions and said, shoot this, shoot that. So in this path, and then on the right, a clear trees, just nature everywhere, even corner. And I said, hold the phone. And I went to fire hose of beautiful vases. But I found them of the Solomon seal. And I think in the barn, again, nothing hugely just some geraniums at the end of the room. So you're not overwhelmed with chintz, but you have that idea that you're near a garden, if not in it. Mimi Brown is someone who now works in New York. She has Mimi Brown's studio, but she started out with us at Flower. She had a department in the magazine called Mimi's Mechanics. And she would do arrangements, and we would break it down. So when we wanted to do some step-by-steps for the back of the book, there are 5, we called Mimi into town. And so on the left is a runner that she did for us. And then on the right is a toile jardinière of mine that was my mother's, and she did a beautiful loose, gardeny tulip arrangement in that. And both of those and 3 more are step-by-step in the back. So you see the chicken wire. We really encourage chicken wire and water. But don't get mad when you look at that step-by-step for the runner, because she did use Oasis. Anyway, And again, there's a place for it, but we shouldn't have advocated for that. So that's the end. It's the same as the beginning, is the Carolina.
Questions for Margot? Questions from the audience? Thank you so much. So appreciate it. Huge minute break to stretch your legs. Use the lady.
No, I'm telling you. What is this thing called, the New Orleans Garden Study Group? What
I just want to recognize Andrew Lamar Hopkins, who was here with us and generously donated his piece for the auction. So, Andrew, if you could stand up and wave to everyone. Thank you so much for your donation. And now I'm going to turn it over to Keith.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you all for coming. And I want to thank the Garden Study Club for inviting me to New Orleans. I said, like most of all the rest of us, I haven't really been anywhere apart from home in the last 15 or 16 months. I just told Frog I don't even think I've spoken to anybody in the last year. So if I fumble and stumble around, please forgive me. But it's so wonderful. I'm ecstatic that y'all invited me here and to be here in New Orleans. I'm so in love with this city, and it's been far too long. Anyway, I'm happy to celebrate spring and what a glorious day we've got outside, and to talk to you about a couple of things that bring us joy, and those would be beautiful rooms and beautiful flowers. And just look at all the displays upstairs, all the creativity and effort and beauty that they put together up there. They're awfully lovely to see. And I honestly don't know much of anything that has captured the fascination of humankind for as much as flowers have. Their kaleidoscopic colors, their beautiful fragrances, their intriguing shapes, and certainly in my business, floral motifs have been a mainstay since the appearance of chintzes in the 18th century. They say that the pendulum of decorating trends are swinging back, and that we're seeing lots more color, lots more pattern, and lots more chintzes even reappearing, ones that are being printed again from archives and things. But I've really never set them aside in all the time I've been decorating. As everybody probably knows, I have a lifelong love affair with brown furniture and chintz, and I have a very special bolt of it in my closet that I'm going to be buried in. So, I was just going to show you, I don't know if I know how to do this. I guess I go that way. How do you do this? Oh. So, roses are red, violets are blue. I hope. So, I was going to just show you a few of my favorites. This is Imperial Garden by Schumacher, called Majestic Garden, I'm sorry, based on a 19th century French document. Just beautiful, glorious, big peonies and birds. This is a chintz called Pulbrook Bouquet, reprinted from the document by Hazelden House. And it's flowers and garlands, characteristic of the work of Pulbrook and Gould, floral decorators for the royal family, for half a century, and the Lady Pulbrook Floral School in London, which is world-renowned. But this screen has 88 different screens in it. It's absolutely beautiful. This is called Homage to Rose Cumming, the flamboyant American decorator who was the first woman to really work in the field of interior design as we know it. Just a beautiful, voluptuous cabbage rose chintz. Here we've got honeysuckle from Colfax and Fowler, which has become a classic, and people are using this again. It comes in this original colorway with this beautiful limey greens and butterflies. This is a chintz called Tuileries, Les Tuileries, and it is printed by Scalamandre, and it was used for bed hangings by Evangeline Bruce, Bunny Mellon, who Margot mentioned earlier. She had a bed hung in a canopy bed, and then they were both mentors of Jacqueline Onassis, and Jackie had this same chintz in her on her bed. In fact, the exact same bed. This is, again, an old-fashioned chintz called Arbor Japonaise from Brunswick. It's been printed since the 50s, and they still make it today. It's just a beautiful, beautiful, watery print. This is Lee Joffa's gorgeous Tree of Life, and it's sold in big panels because it has like a 6-foot repeat. And they say it has 365 different blocks, one for each day of the year. But one for each day of the year. It has a 100-inch repeat, and the colors are saturated and jewel-like. And I said, so are your eyes when you have to write the check to pay for it. That's the only thing with these beautiful hand-block chintzes there. This is my absolute favorite. This is called a tribute to John Fowler, again by Hazelden House. Beautiful, beautiful hand-block linen, which is exuberant and happy. And anyway, it is a good harbinger of spring. It's great to be again here today with that beautiful weather outside and to start to celebrate spring with you all. This is a scene from New York in all its glory. And I love the quote, that spring can show us what God can do with a drab and dirty world. And God knows, hopefully leaving this hideous epidemic behind us, it's just so wonderful to be out and about and embrace the world again and not be sort of cloistered at home, even though that's a good place to be. It has made me think a lot, as I think all of us have, about things that are important and things that we should really appreciate and we should really not take for granted ever again. And one of those things are the tradespeople and people who do, again, it's like standing before you here today as a decorator. I couldn't do anything that I do if it weren't for the able and talented hands behind me who make all this fluff and stuff happen. This is Audrey, one of my seamstresses in New York, who makes the most beautiful curtains you've ever seen. And artisans, carpenters, builders, upholsterers, craftsmen, it just shows us how vital they are to creating this beauty and how important it is to keep these trades alive and how grateful we are for those who do. I am a frustrated couturier. I'd much rather make dresses than curtains, but these are just some beautiful curtains that I've made. These chocolate brown ones hanging from a serpentine gilded pelmet in a dining room, Park Avenue, with a beautiful Bessarabian floral carpet underneath it belonged to Brooke Astor. And then this is my friend Allison Kendrick's house here in New Orleans, which is beautiful, and we sort of were inspired by the curtains of Nancy Lancaster's design, and they're made in unlined silk, but just beautifully made and beautifully detailed. There's nothing like it. This is an apartment that we did recently in New York City and just shows you all these guys so fast at work. We were on a huge deadline, and I conceived that had this great Coromandel screen hanging on the wall, and so I designed this sofa that was 14.5 feet long. Well, little do I realize we get to the apartment and it won't fit in the elevator, through the window, over the roof, whatever, so it's sitting out on the street for about a day and a half. So finally we got the sofa doctor in New York to come slice it in two. We bring it into the apartment in pieces, and so we had to my guys came and completely rebuilt and reupholstered the thing on the spot. And there it sits in all its glory. Sadly, though, my client sold this apartment and moved to Charleston, and so we had to come chop it back into 3 pieces to take it back out. So he spent more on that sofa than he did on the apartment. This is another little bit of a calamity. I've been lucky enough to work on the most beautiful house in Charleston on the High Battery for the last 3 years. My client's done a major restoration of the big pink house in Charleston. You probably may know it. It's on East Battery. It was owned by only 2 families. They called the Ravenel House originally. But I bought this incredible English Regency chandelier in London, pitched a fit for my client to buy it, jumping up and down, saying, "You've got to buy this, the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. It has a cut glass pineapple in the center of it," whatever. It belongs in Charleston, whatever. I neglected to tell our master restorers and builders that it weighed 8.5 tons. So when it was shipped over, he goes, "Keith, that chandelier's not going to hang from that ceiling. I'm sorry, I don't know what to do." And we just spent months restoring the plaster medallions or whatever. So I said, "Moby, you got to figure out a way to hang it. Come on, you got to do this." And so he goes to the bedroom upstairs, chops a huge hole in the ceiling, puts all this steel and blocking and everything, fills that back in, puts the rug on top, and up goes the chandelier. But you may have to be careful when you eat under it. But you can see the dining room coming together around it, beautiful. I had Gracie paint scenes of Charleston and the harbor and the bombing of Fort Sumter, and we even put, you see on the far left, we even put the Ravenel Bridge crossing over. So and we did it all in tones of kind of tobacco and sepia. It's very successful. It looks like it's been there for a while. Nothing like those houses in Charleston, except houses in New Orleans, right? They're just as pretty here. And also, the next thing I'm sort of thinking I'm thankful for are my mentors. I was lucky enough when I got off the Greyhound bus in New York City to get my first job with Mark Hampton, but I worked for the longest time for Keith Irvin and Tom Fleming at a firm called Irvin and Fleming, and Keith was Scottish. He trained under under John Fowler in London, and then he moved to New York, worked briefly for Sister Parish, and then started his own business. And he was very instrumental in sort of spreading and making popular the English country style in America in the late 80s and early 90s, and introduced a lot of chintzes that had never been seen in America before, and he just did beautiful classic English country house decorating. He was obsessed with the South. In fact, Sam Blunt, who Olivia knows well, and who's from Philadelphia, Mississippi, and he had always Southern assistants. He loved that, and he loved anything to do with the South. And his favorite movie was Gone with the Wind. So we would travel all around the world doing these grand installations for these beautiful houses all around. And his favorite moment every time, whenever he got near a grand staircase, he'd love to come sweeping down and proclaim, "We show is rich now." Then again, before I even knew what bullion fringe was, I finagled myself in 1979 a ticket to the fancy opening of the Kips Bay Decorator Show House. And I never really knew who Mark Hampton was. So I go in and I'm absolutely gobsmacked by this black room. It's almost like dark black, dark brown. It's almost black. And Mark had put, you can't, it's a terrible picture, but it was this huge drawing room in a big fancy townhouse, and had sisal all over the floor, and all the furniture, before anybody really knew what sisal was, and all the furniture's covered in creamy cotton rep, and then he filled it with this beautiful William Kent furniture and fancy paintings and all. And anyway, I was just taken beyond with that, and I was lucky enough to, after a lot of persistence, to got a job as an apprentice in his office and worked there for a couple of years running errands for him. But 25 years later, I did my own version of this black room for a lovely couple, great clients of mine in Greenwich, Connecticut. And we did, anyway, my version of it. And the star of the show are these beautiful Irish bookcases. They were a pair of these bookcases that we bought in London at Bonham's and had them restored and shipped over here. And they kind of made the room. But black rooms are really, deep color I think is always good because it makes the walls kind of recede in a room, and it makes you sort of look into the wall and sort of instead of at it. And I think they create atmosphere and without, in a way that you don't realize until you're in the room, right? Does that make sense? Anyway, here we also appreciate home. This is my crazy house that I owned for 20 years out on the east end of Long Island in Watermill. And this house was derelict. I had seen it for several years before I finally was lucky enough to be able to buy it. We started a renovation of it, just a gentle renovation because I wanted it to still appear old and friendly and sort of crooked. And I love these colors, and I worked very hard on these colors, this dark color on the shingle, because the shingle had been sort of stained and worn, and it needed to be unified by a color, but I didn't want to paint just another white house with green shutters. My neighbor, who I'd not met, because we used to have wild parties in those days, so she hated us anyway, she comes and knocks on my door when the final paint is going up, and she said, "Hi," and she introduced herself, "You're Mr. Langham," and I go, "Yes," and she said, "I'm so-and-so from across the street, and here's an apple pie and that I made, and here's some flowers from our garden, and we want to welcome you to the neighborhood." And she said, "I hear you're a decorator of note," and I go, "Well, I guess so," and she said, "Well, we've watched the renovation of the house," and she goes, "These are your test colors, right?" I go, No, these are colors that the house is finished, this is the paint color," and I said, "I call it creosote and boiled shrimp." And she took 2 steps back from me and looked me square in the face, and she said, "Well, Mr. Langham, let me be the first to tell you, you are destroying a perfectly beautiful Victorian." Anyway, it's funny. I don't think we ever spoke again for 22 years. But those are my hydrangeas. They were kind of my pride and joy. Anything, I mean, I'm not a gardener by any means, but it's the climate on the east end of Long Island is like England. Anything just grows if you look at it. This is a shot too from Margot's book, a shot of a lunch party on my porch. And then again, those hydrangeas are just unbelievable. I think they're called Annabelle. And you see my creosote and boiled shrimp shutters. Another shot of the porch. This is my little house, which is where I used to live, and which was separate from the house. I'd fill the house with guests and company all the time, and then I would stay out in what used to be the garage, and never been happier. This was our little tent, which we built out by the little square swimming pool, and I bought those flamingos at the Kmart in Los Angeles, and they arrived with broken necks. So I looked up the SKU number, and they only had 2 pair left up in somewhere near Albany. So I drove for 6 hours and got the last pair they had of these $195 pink flamingos. But they were made out of concrete, so they were fabulous. So now I'm also thankful for all my clients. I've been very fortunate to work for lovely people, and you form such a bond with people when you're working so closely with them for so long. We used to say it takes 1.5 years to do houses. Now it seems to be taking 10 years. But just show you here a few of my favorite rooms. This is a beautiful house in Hattiesburg, Mississippi that I did with Louis Graber, an architect who trained under Koch and Wilson here. The walls were done by a fellow called Bruce Nettles from Natchez, and they're this beautiful French pickle process where he wets the cypress and he scrapes the pulp out of the wood with wire brushes, and then he puts sheetrock mud and stains and honey and all this other stuff, and then ends up waxing them, and it's just the most beautiful finish that mellows over time. And then we just fill the room with really, really handsome English furniture. This is a screen porch off the back with these wonderful wicker chairs. There's a woman called Leslie Curtis up in Maine who makes these great wicker reproductions. These are fabulous old, like Lloyd Loom, I guess you call them, those tall back, fan back chairs. They're really great. This is a bedroom in that same house, which I love, and a bed after a design by Thomas Chippendale that we bought in England. Beautiful old needlepoint rug. Again, chintz on a couple of the pieces of furniture. Beautiful aquamarine wallpaper from Colfax and Fowler. And then the curtains we did here were unlined silk that I embroidered on the edge. And then she has motorized curtains of a heavy French matelassé underneath them, so you can hit the button and darken the room. But in the daytime, it's so beautiful with the light coming through that aquamarine silk. There's nothing prettier. Again, rather do dresses and curtains. This is another room I just did for a friend in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, in the middle of Amish country, believe it or not. And again, just a really pretty living room, a rug that I had made in India. I'm very proud of that rug. I think it's really beautiful. It's this enormous overscale paisley pattern, and it's made of like a loop and a clipped kind of cotton chenille. She did call me last week and told me that if you move the furniture, the rug is purple, but other than that, I think it's fading. It's not color fast at all, so I'm a little bit in trouble there, but I told her to flip it over. We can use it on the reverse, maybe. This is her pretty dining room, which we painted this ceiling kind of a black green, a chandelier I bought from Kevin Stone here in New Orleans. I think we bought the chairs, too, from Kyle's in the French Quarter, and wonderful portrait over the fireplace. And we did the walls. You can see we did this a rendition of this climbing hydrangea wallpaper, and that's the wallpaper that was made by Hobe Irwin. And it's, again, I'm back to Gone with the Wind. It was in the house in Atlanta on the staircase, the wallpaper. And this was in the movie. But anyway, I had Gracie paint this green version of it, and we just did sort of a bigger, bolder scale of it. This is her kitchen, which I love, which we did a Cotswold style floor with 3 different color stones, sort of randomly laid. We painted the whole kitchen this sort of boysenberry color. I bought that painting from Suzanne Reinstein, from New Orleans, and from her shop in L.A. Of that, it's a naive sort of French folk painting of figs and butterflies and hornets. I love that painting. Beautiful big English Regency table, ladder back chairs with rush seats. It's just a nice, friendly kitchen. This is her dressing room in this same house, which again we did that John Fowler tribute to John Fowler chintz on most of the furniture. The room is this vivid chartreuse color, and her clothes hang behind all these curtained openings. with like a double-faced organza with that citron-y green behind it. And then she has all these beautiful drawers with all her collection of Verdura jewelry, which I'm a great fan of his jewelry designs. I just love looking at that picture. I think it's great. This is that apartment where the sofa got butchered a million times in New York, with just a beautiful New York living room. It's on about the 4th floor of a really nice building. It has beautiful views outside. We inherited that boiserie that was original to the apartment and painted it kind of a French gray with this dusty sort of gold and silver picked out decoration, and a beautiful mahal rug, and just a nice pretty living room. The chairs had belonged to Albert Hadley, those oval back leather chairs. This is a library in that same apartment where, again, I did a dark ceiling, dark sort of midnight blue, and this beautiful long sofa with bolsters. That one I did not have to cut into pieces. And I love the embroidered curtains here. They have a big wide embroidered band on them. Again, that same sort of French gray on the boiserie. This is a great apartment on Central Park South in a building called the Gainsborough Studios, named for the English painter, and built at the turn of the century. And they're these tall artist studio apartments and just beautiful double height. And this one sits, the building is smack in the middle of Central Park. So you have Fifth Avenue on one side and Central Park West on the other, and then the park in between. And it's just beautiful. You can open these French doors and watch the seasons change. It's just lovely. I wish, I call this in my book a bedroom and a ballroom, because it really is just this room and then a bedroom on the back. So it's kind of, I think, ideal. But that's the bedroom on the back of this house, which my client there had always had lavender bedrooms since the time she was a young girl. So she always, everything I've done several houses for her, and every time we don't even have to think about it. She said, you know, we always had to do a lavender bedroom. There's something nice about that kind of longevity and things. And then last, I'm thankful that for my most famous client, and has everybody heard these stories ad nauseum, Jackie Onassis, who I stalked as a young man because I was so fascinated with her. And I finally ended up meeting her, and she nicknamed me my friend from the elevator because I had been on the elevator with her 65 times. I called my mother the day I met her. I go, "Mother, you're not going to believe who I met today. You're not going to believe I met Jackie Onassis today." And my mother goes, "Well, thank goodness. You have been obsessed with her since you were 3. And I did, after she died, Amy Fine Collins interviewed some people for this article for Vanity Fair, and I just want to share this with you, again, thinking of home. At the time, this is me speaking, at the time when Carolina Herrera was doing fittings for Caroline's wedding dress, she brought Mrs. Onassis to our offices at Irvin and Fleming, where I was then working. She needed a few things refurbished in her apartment, so off we went. My heart was pounding when I stepped off the elevator. When the doors opened, was I surprised. I had expected Versailles, but instead I saw an apartment that was simple, restrained, perfect, grand and humble at the same time, just like she was. She had a great love for French furniture, but her taste was so quiet that unless you had some knowledge, you would never notice how fine the pieces really were. There were a lot of French and Italian old master drawings and watercolors, mostly of animals. It felt like a family apartment, cozy, warm, friendly. John and Caroline's rooms were still there. She had a marvelous sense of continuity. We discussed 10 different fabrics for curtains or the upholstery, considered doing an about face for the apartment, but we'd always come back to reweaving the original or substituting it with something similar. She loved that place so much and wanted to keep it as she had always known it. And I was thinking about the rituals she had in that apartment. I did learn so much from her, and so lucky as just a bumpkin to have known her. And one of the things, this first part of May, we've been talking about lilacs so much. First part of May, she would send Effigenio, her butler, out to her house in Peapack, New Jersey, about 50 miles outside the city. And literally, he would take a U-Haul truck, and he would chop down like a literal forest of lilac boughs. And he would come back into the city, and for several hours, he would work in her drawing room in this big Chinese vase on her mantelpiece, and he would do this colossal arrangement of lilac branches that literally came up to the ceiling and cascaded back over you, and the scent was all over the apartment. And so for those first 2 weeks of May, anytime you'd go in that apartment, you'd be knocked over by the scent. And the first time I ever saw that ritual, because she did it every year like clockwork on the first part of May, because the lilacs only last for about 3 weeks. And she walked through with a cigarette in her hand, and she goes, "Yes, I told Effigenio, all you have to do is put a few sprigs of lilac in a vase, and they'll all rave for days." So, here's to Ms. Zoe. And so I'll end this with a poem that was a favorite of hers. "It's hard to find fault with the world, with the lilacs in bloom at the door. Then the banners of grouchdom are furled, and life is worth living once more. The loved ones gone yonder come back to breathe once again their perfume, and joy has a clear, open track when the old-fashioned lilacs in bloom." That's it. Thank you for coming. Short and sweet. Thank y'all for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Does anyone have any questions for Keith? Any questions in the audience? Claire.
Gracie and Company, Gracie. They're the ones they specialize mostly in chinoiserie and Chinese wallpapers. But they have studios in New York and in China, and they paint. Mostly, you know them for the big climbing, Chinese papers. But you can send them any artwork or whatever, and they'll work with you to do anything.
Any other questions for Keith? Well, thank you all so much for coming today. We just, a couple of months ago when we were trying to figure out if we could pull this off and figuring out this sort of hybrid in-person virtual event, we just tried to get creative, and we were just so excited that over time this worked out so we could do this lectures in person. And for people who came last night to the preview party, I hope you had a great time. There's another one this evening. We hope you'll come. We hope you'll check out the auction while you're here. Our co-chairs of that, Lizzie Kuhn and Karen Gunlock in the back, have done a great job with that, so thank you so much. And Catherine Kerner, if I'm not sure if she's here. So they've done a great job. I'd like to take this opportunity and ask everybody to give a huge round of applause to our co-chairs, Kim Roddy and Brett LaPere. They were brave enough to say yes and keep saying yes, even in the middle of COVID, so thank you. There are books that Margot and Keith are going to be signing out in the Great Hall, so we hope everybody will make their way out there and then make your way around after that to the cafe to pick up your box lunch. You can have your lunch here in the cafe. You can go out into the sculpture garden across the street. There'll be tables set up there and have a picnic, or feel free to enjoy it at home. But on behalf of the museum and the Garden Study Club, we just can't thank you enough for your support. And thank you, and we hope to see you next year. Bye.